This meeting is being recorded.
Um, can you hear now?
Yeah,
That's
I can hear you now.
perfect. All right. So we were just doing the adoption of the agenda and that was moved and seconded. So I was just going to call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that motion is carried. And then adoption of the minutes of the June 23rd meeting, if there are no errors or omissions. Moved by Councillor Bird for discussion. Okay, seconded by Councillor Leawood. Councillor Bird.
Through the chair, I know that we did get correspondence pointing out that we had made a resolution using the wrong names for the library committee, like the changes in the library building committee. And I'm wondering if, obviously the minutes are correct, so I'm not disputing that, but what should we do to correct the situation so that we make a resolution with the correct names?
I can't remember what,
I've got it here.
oh no, I know who was incorrectly there. It was, because it was taking off Ann Hurd, but she was already off and it was, Trish Feeney who was on, but wasn't taken off, but
I could, if you,
um, is that something that we would do right now? Because right now we're adopting the minutes. So the minutes are, as per the agenda, are correct.
Mhm.
So, so that the minutes are correct, right? It's just what fed the minutes was incorrect is what was pointed out. So,
through the chair, perhaps a notice of motion to make another resolution that would have the correct names would be.
right, I think the staff can just deal with that. And maybe Councillor Leathwood, can you confirm? I can't remember whether you were not at the last meeting and that's maybe why we don't catch it. Okay.
It was the time before I wasn't there.
Oh, okay.
I don't actually know. So Anne Hurd, Margaret Wenke, and Ian Delbert were taken off. I thought here. So Anne and Hillary were added, so I'm not quite sure what names.
No, it was Ann Hurd was already off in 2024.
Oh, I see.
And it should have been Trish Feeney because she had been appointed to the committee after Ann Hurd had timed out. So.
Mayor Hewitt, perhaps if just leave it with staff, we'll check our resolution records and determine what needs to be done to correct it.
Right. But if that was what was in the documentation, then this resolution is correct. It as per the minutes, but not correct.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah. All right. So any further discussion? And staff will note that. And all those in favor? Motion is carried. And we have no art at council this evening, but we do have a delegation from the Kootenay Lake Historical Society. So we've got
Go ahead.
both of you or
Yes.
yeah. Okay, so Sarah and Kit, welcome to council. And so you can come up to the table if you wish, and you get 10
Twice I've clicked unmute. Yeah. Rob Lang is having the same trouble.
We have no volume.
I can't hear it either.
Okay, is it back now?
Yes,
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Right, so if everyone else online can please mute while our delegation is speaking. So I'll give you a little extra time if you need it.
Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, and it's just to understand the terms, because in this lease agreement is called basic rent. And from my experience of the basic rent is special net, then you got 2N net and 3N net of who's responsible for the different levels of repairs and maintenance, up to 3 ends, which they you look after the whole structure, the whole building. And with the idea of basic rent is basically a special, and which is just the simplest of paying the lease and the taxes and the sewers. So then it comes back to the idea of maintenance. It's in here many times. Some of the maintenance that we have done on visitor center, like replacing that foredeck, over $10,000. We've done this and we've done that. How much of this should we be doing, paying out of the funds that should be going to the Moye? Because we pay it out of the Moye funds that we collect. How much does the village supposed to help us out in maintaining as the landlords of the visitor center?
And so that's what, we're just looking for clarification moving forward as
Right.
to the right words. Where's our role and what does it look like? Because the visitor center is in that age of like, it needs new flooring, there's a lot of, Mike's seen the list. And the wish list, and some of it is like more, because we see 20,000 people through there every summer. And it is the front facing the storefront for Kaslo in a way. And so we just want to make sure as we move forward, like, is this a collaboration for grant efforts? What are the terms and is the Historical Society responsible for under the new, as we move forward for a 10-year lease? And Robert was great in sending out information about what general maintenance means and just some terminology. So we just want to come today, and we're very thankful for the village's partnership, of course, and the many years from 1957, the Historical Society. Not all those years it's been in the visitor center, but we've been good partners with the village in bad times.
All right.
How much time we have left?
Oh, you still got about 5 minutes, I would say.
Well, just to reemphasize, like last year from the fees for the Moye, we put in $46,000 to support the visitor center. And, because we don't get any money from the Chamber of Commerce like typical communities do. And we actually have to pay into the Chamber of Commerce. So it's this money we have committed to CBT to save money next time for the Moye work, because they said we'll only do 50%. We're putting in another grant right now for $50,000 to do the spot of it. We've already paid about 25,000 this year for the new decking and doing the caboose. And it's just, it looks like we do take a lot of money, but we do spend it in terms of thousands at a time. And it's just a support of the village of some of the basic maintenance and things that should we be doing them or requesting them, and some things we request, get dropped. And it's just where on the lease agreement do we stop? But we bought a water tank. Really, we shouldn't have bought the water tank under the lease agreement. I should think the village bought the water tank. So, but it was 30 years old and it was all about ready to leak. So it's just little things like that. We will need clarification on where is the village going to take over, help us out with some of the costs. Other than having to write the grants and stuff like the lighting. It's so old that the ceramic fittings are cracked. And, well, should have started a fire because they've cracked. stuff like that.
And the
Yeah.
heat pump, we worked with CBT and we put a heat pump in the building, but the additional funds came out of historical society funding. So those are moving forward as we build out a 10-year lease. We just want to know what's the process for getting new flooring, doing the roof, doing all of the things that need to be done so we can be good caretakers of the building, without taking money away from the main economic driver for Kaslo, which is the ship. Because the building is the building and which is owned by you, but we don't want to end up being like, well, we have to fix the visitor center versus maintaining the upgrading the ship.
And the other thought is, renegotiating this lease, if we can sit down with the committee and kind of go through it, so it can be presented at the council in more, what we're thinking about terms.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Do any members of council have questions for our delegation? Councillor Bird.
Through the chair. So you were talking about the maintenance procedures, who pays what for the visitor center, but it's understood by you that the MOI itself and the historical and the museum is to be paid separate fees and through grants that you.
100%, yeah. So we are the custodians of the SS Moyer we have a 99-year lease with the village for that, which is coming closer.
But we-
But we probably all over our mistake with that.
Which also has the word maintenance. And what does maintenance mean in that? But that's 1957's talk. So, but it's just, we're going forward with the monies that we want to save the ship with. Because prior to this, the money was never put towards the shipping, it was always put towards operating the visitor center, which unfortunately Destination BC doesn't give us very much money to support the difference.
All right, any other questions? All right, see Councillor Lang with his hand up. So thank you for your. All right, so that brings us to public input. So this is a time when public who are here in person can address council on items of business appearing on the agenda. When the chair calls upon a speaker, they shall state their name and place of residence. They will have up to 2 minutes to speak. After all speakers have provided input, council members will have the opportunity to ask brief clarifying questions. Council will not engage in debate. And if a speaker's input relates to operational issues, staff will be happy to assist you during regular business hours. So, are there any questions? Okay, go ahead, Bill.
Yes, I also wrote a letter on this topic that I've seen in June, the purchase and sale agreement that I may have looked at incorrectly or not, but so I'll just go to that second item I was concerned about, which is Schedule E, Section E, 219. And I'm curious to know why it's incomplete. There's items in there that are blank, unsert, the body of water, for example, and it's unsigned. And I'm just curious to know why is that included in such an extensive legal document?
Okay, any other questions? If anyone online has a question, you can use the raise hand function and I'll call upon you. Or unmute if that works. Right. Not seeing anyone. All right. So I'll turn that question over to CAO Baker then. I think you're the only one who can answer that.
Thank you, Mayor Hewitt. So the purchase and sale agreement identifies the conditions that have to be met in order for the sale to complete. One of the conditions is a covenant. And That covenant has not been finalized yet. It's just a condition that needs to be finalized. So it's been drafted and there's details that need to be added at the proper time. And when it comes time to finalize the covenant and apply it to the titles, then that's the process that'll occur.
Right.
Can I ask you a clarifying question? Or
Who were you asking, the delegation or CAO Baker?
CEO Baker
Okay.
to the chair. So when would be that time? Like after what other conditions are met or?
I would have to pull up the timeline that we drafted in 2025 that lays out the schedule and the order of everything. I'd have to bring it up and check.
Okay.
Right. And then we did receive 2 written submissions, and one was from Shelley Stickle Miles and one was from Mr. Wells. And they are both available at the end of the table, and they have been distributed to council in advance of this meeting. They were sent yesterday morning, I believe, as soon as staff had them in their inbox. So we'll move on to reports from council and staff. Provided my written report. Any questions from council on any of the items contained in my report? Councillor Bird.
For the chair. So I did a broad question, but what are the practical implications of the Community Sustainable Living Advisory Committee? And what are the practical implications of it transitioning from a committee governing service S105 to a standing committee? What's different about that?
Well, what's different is right now, there's only half of the board that the members who participate. We are the sole remaining municipality. Although Silverton is still in until their 2-year notice period is up. And one rural area. So there's 9 municipalities in the regional district and 11 rural areas. So there's at this point two municipalities who are paying into the service. And they're out of the 11 electoral areas, 1 has withdrawn, 2 more have signaled that they're going to withdraw. So that brings us to, I think it's 9 participants, and many of the programs that have been initiated through the funding supplied through, it's called CSLAC for short. It's benefiting the whole region in some respect. So that's become an issue for many, because as the participant numbers drop off, the requisition goes up for each of the remaining ones, because there hasn't been a deduction or reduction in the number of programs. We're trying to transition them to general administration. That means all 20 pay. So everybody gets benefit. So everybody's paying for that benefit. So that is the benefit of doing it that way. And because more and more are signaling their intent to withdraw from the service. Other questions? And then Councillor Brown has provided a report, the minutes of the last community forest meeting. Thank you. And any verbal reports, many members of council. Councillor Leetwood.
To the chair. There are minutes from the events committee, but we didn't really talk about Kaslo's birthday at that meeting. And there's only one meeting in August, which is on the 11th, and the birthday's on the 14th. So just a reminder that we will be asking for some help on that day. It'll be on the 14th from 12 to 2. We've got some musicians coming and some like tables where there's wall sit will be there, and Fire Smart, I think, is coming. We've got some Fire Smart seeds this year to give out. And then we will be giving Citizen of the Year. So
Thank you, Councillor Leathwood. Anything else? All right, so now we'll move on to the CAO's report. We will bring that up on the screen, will you?
Yes, yeah. Mayor Hewitt, so CEO report to council. Just to highlight any changes would be the number of council resolutions has gone up due to the last council meeting. You'll notice that progress in all the different categories of your strategic priorities have gradually increased over the last couple of weeks. And I'll highlight that there are some additional tasks that are now overdue. One would be I believe a new one is award of the flood and erosion planning contract. And so that's in progress of being awarded as we speak and should be back on track within a week or two. The accessibility plan remains overdue, and I'm going to speak to it in the next presentation. So perhaps we'll just leave it at that for now and foreshadow that there's a question that staff will pose for council. And then there's the RV park purchase and sale agreement, which was finalized. And then we had to take a step back here when the other party asked for a change to be made. So it's back on the strategic priorities list as overdue, since we had expected that to be completed by the end of the first quarter. And I don't believe there's any other major changes other than the number of council resolutions has increased. I believe it was the letter to the province regarding electrical generation that was being completed and worth highlighting. Otherwise, I'll hand it back to council to ask any questions.
All right. Do any members of council have questions on the CAO report? Councillor Bird?
Through the chair, I just want to say thank you for the letter to the province and to all the people that you did send it to on behalf of their electricity generation returns from BC Hydro. Good letter. Thanks.
Right. Any other questions? Right, so then we will move on to the second quarter municipal services update. And that will be you, Mike? Where are you?
Projects overview.
Oh, sorry, I skipped over that. Projects overview, yes.
I think that one's for me. I'll pick us off here just a second. Okay, so we have an update on projects that council had approved for 2026. So we haven't titled this a capital projects update because some of the projects are not necessarily capital related. They're more operational. Worth highlighting that the water treatment plant project, which was close to $1 million project that spanned a couple of years, more than that if you include planning and design, is complete. And we toured members of council last week who were interested in seeing what the upgrades were. And should advise council that the UV treatment equipment as well as power consumption costs will increase. So moderately for this year, 2026, because the equipment's new and it's only been operating for a portion of the year. But in 2027, we should see the full effect of the annual maintenance costs and increased power consumption. And so that'll be reflected in your draft budget for 2027. Kaslo Bay washroom, I'll hand that one over to Mike.
Sure. Thanks, Robert. So we have an installation date of Tuesday, July 28th of 2 washrooms in the Kaslo Bay. And so leak will be coming out. We will be able to use the existing vaults. The total cost was $55,800. That does not include the minor amount of excavation the works crew will be doing just around the existing vaults and lids. But we're under budget and we will have washrooms usable by the end of the month. Paving, I can move on. So I've been working on this paving tender for some time. I had SPR come up at their cost, which is greater than to reassess some of the roads to help me better estimate the amount of subgrade and rebuilding that has to happen on Arena, Balfour Ave, and Front Street, down by the park and Second Street as well. And so I'm back working on the tender, hoping to get that out very quickly so that we can have the work done by October. PRV, not a big update from last time I presented. We say we'll do some site investigation in Q3. That's some minor excavation work to look at the new location of the stubs to get an exact dimension of the angles of those stubs so that we can finalize the design and then put that up under for construction. So that is on track. This is said on that slide. Asset management, we continue to work with Land Infotech. Our next meeting is tomorrow. We're updating things like building values, land assessments, that's more like PC assessment values. We're just getting better at our data at this point. So a lot of work is being done by staff and Land Infotech. The next step is using an engineering consultant to really deep dive into our wastewater treatment plant and the components in that building for us management plan.
Sure, I'm on these ones. So Campbell Memorial Center, the project is ongoing, as you know, and behind schedule. The HVAC system, so the pumps have been pressure tested and the electrical installed. Right now, we're waiting for a date for Fortis to come in and do the electrical upgrade to 400 amps for the building. And once that is in place, they'll be able to fully put the HVAC systems in service. Similarly, the fire alarm system and suppression system is also at about 95% completion. And we'll be awaiting finalization once the electrical upgrades are done. Washrooms are also waiting on that HVAC to be completed so that the drywalling can be done and everything sealed off. So as you can see, everything kind of cascades back from one thing to another. But the letting RFP has been issued and Mike is working on that. And we're trying to get a structural RFP ready for the awnings that will go over the heat pump that will provide water protection and sound baffling. So we're just getting that finalized, and that the structural scope has been kind of a major problem for us trying to get a handle on what we can afford to do with the remaining budget. So for about 200 and 250,000, what are the priorities in terms of crack repair and those kinds of things? Considering that the last estimate, ballpark estimate we got for doing everything would be about $2 to $2.5 million. So we got about 1/10 of the money that's going to be spent on the building. That's not going to fall down, but we do need to get a prioritization about exactly what we can do with the current scope of the project, and then in the future, then maybe a grant opportunity comes up to do some further work on that. We did get our funding extended to the end of the year with the original syrup grant, which was awarded back in 2023. So that was good to hear. The province is happy to hear that we're still making progress on the project, and they're very understanding that things take time. But as long as they're seeing progress, they're happy to give us a further extension. Next is housing initiatives. This is a major planning project to update the official community plan to comply with Bill 44 housing needs assessment and so on, as well as a complete update to our zoning bylaw. We were hoping that we might have something for this meeting, but we weren't quite ready yet. So we'll be at the August 12th meeting. We'll be presenting the OCP and the draft zoning bylaw for first and second meeting. And we're looking at the committee of the whole meeting coming up later this month to present this draft zoning bylaw and have discussion about that because council hasn't yet seen a full version of that. So with all going well, there would be the public hearing scheduled for August 25th and then final adoption of the bylaws at the first meeting in September. Next is the source water protection plan. We've contracted out to a company called Map Hydrohydrology. Partnering with Kaslo Consulting, so we're very happy that a local firm came in and with the best price and a really strong proposal as for in terms of what we're looking for to do a source water protection plan for Kent Creek, Springs, and Kaslo River. So we've had a kickoff meeting and they've already been working for about a month now on the project. And they say things are on track for completion by the end of November. And then the Kaslo River Flood and Erosion Mitigation Project. This one was a bit behind on the issuance of the RFP because we needed to get a scope that suited the budget. So we initially went out and the feedback that we got from the consultants of roughly $50,000 was we can't do it for that because we were asking for construction ready drawings. So we scaled back the scope to be a preliminary design, and we've emphasized that it has to be sufficient for us to get a future grant opportunity, application ready when there's structural funding available. So typically, when that would be under a similar program to the disaster infrastructure relief program that we got the planning funding for. And they will also be preparing permit applications for Section 11 under the provincial legislation and Fisheries Act, so that we can get those permit processes in play, because they can take at least a year to 2 years, and we need to have those before we can apply for big grants. So this project will get us ready to get all that done. Again, by the end of November, the grant for that and source protection program ends at the end of December of this year. And so got both of these consultant opportunities scheduled for end of November. The RFP is closed and we've evaluated 4 bids that came in, and we're just now working with the preferred vendor on that, hoping to have a kickoff meeting as soon as next week, and then we'll be able to announce details of that.
I can take this one back. Thank you, gentlemen. So Next Generation 911 is a project where we need to ensure all of our existing mapping and GIS data has been reviewed and any addressing issues corrected. So that work is in progress. We've applied for an extension to the grant through 2027 and should hear back shortly. So that project is well in hand. We have information system upgrades to our finance program for work order management and a scanning module. So that order has been placed and we're awaiting the install and training that'll happen within the third quarter. Very pleased to announce that we've received a $190,000 grant from the UBCM Development Approvals Program to fund systems that we desperately need to improve the efficiency, clarity, and effectiveness of our development approval systems. That'll help us achieve our housing goals and increase our housing supply. It would include things like development permits, variance permits, and our subdivision servicing bylaw, including all of the forward-facing documents that you might see on our website or brochures you might pick up at the front counter, as well as staff training and all the behind-the-scenes processes and procedures we need in place to move things quickly. Right now, it's always a struggle when we receive these types of applications. And so we're hoping that it will be significantly improved with the success of this grant. So very happy to let council know publicly that we've received this funding. And then there are a couple of projects which I have yellow lighted. One would be for City Hall. For 2026, council had asked for replacement of the Widows Walk on the roof of City Hall. And given some unplanned workload pressures that have come up, including increased work that's been put on the CAO plate through the CAO goals that were established a couple of months ago, as well as operational issues, corporate priorities, and work that seems to be taking longer than we had expected, or even work that, special events have come up, and the amount of staff time that have had to go into working through special event issues. All of that's resulted in staff having concern about whether we can actually complete all of the work that's on council's strategic priorities, objectives, and measures, and on the CAO's mandate letter, in addition to any resolutions that council has passed. And so what staff are looking for is for council to consider moving the City Hall Widows Walk project into 2027. And further to that, there's an accessibility plan that council had earmarked for 2026. And for all of the same reasons, staff are looking for council's discussion and hopefully a decision on whether development of that accessibility plan can be deferred to 2027. Work that's outstanding would be the wastewater treatment plant. So we're at a stalemate, hence the red light, until we have approval for grant funding to proceed with the $3.8 million wastewater treatment plant upgrades that are needed. to handle our increased peak flows and higher wastewater concentrations. Thank you, Mayor Hewitt.
Are there any questions from that report? The chair, so Councillor Leafwood.
To the chair, the next gen project, who's doing that project?
Through the chair, it's being done by our municipal services clerk largely in cooperation with regional district staff.
Councillor Brown.
When we're looking at the flood and erosion mitigation, it's mentioned that they'll be assessing the river for risks and things of that nature. Is that an ongoing assessment that they make? Or do they come to our community at a certain time to look at the river and make their assessment? And if so, would they consider a proposed wall on South Beach when they're making that assessment? As it's not there now, but it is in a plan that's intended for that area.
There was nothing in the RFP asking about a hypothetical wall on South Beach. They will be looking at more the upper reaches of Kaslo River from the municipal boundary down to just past the highway bridge. That's sort of the scope that they've been given. They've been given a high resolution imagery of the entire length and LiDAR imagery, which allows them to do 3D modeling and that kind of thing. And they will be coming to do an on-site assessment as well to get eyes on the ground and identify what areas need improvements similar to what was done 2 or 3 years ago. And so that's kind of where we're looking at getting done. It's for the riprap and what's called MSE wall, which is the sort of baskets of stone and where the priority areas are. So that's the scope that they're looking at in this project. And they will identify up to 3 sites. That's what's included in the project scope right now.
Councillor Bird.
To the chair, about paving and the RFP that the contract that has been put out there. Does it include any kind of traffic calming measures at the park?
Through the chair, so the tender is not out yet. I'm still rewriting it since it was pulled about a month and a half ago due to issues with quantities. There is no traffic calming. There's a line item for traffic control, but not specifically for calming though.
Through the chair, if you elaborate on the difference between
Actually, traffic, yeah, sure, traffic, sorry, and through the chair, traffic control is simply when roads have to be shut down for movement. The contractor has to have alternate ways to control traffic, whether it's one lane only. And I understand the traffic easing is more of a like speed bumps or stuff like that. No, that is not part of this tender. This is simply asphalt rehab work.
Councillor Lang, did you have any questions? Right. So there were 2 items in there that CEO Baker was looking for some discussion and direction from council on, and that is the Widows Walk and the accessibility plan. Given that there are pressures on staff time and there's only 24 hours in a day and they don't work 24 hours a day. So much as I would like to see them both go forward this year, I think is council amendable to having them deferred to 2027? Right, resolution or do you want a resolution for deferring those 2 projects to 2027 as per the report? Or
If you, I could read the recommendation and council can decide whether motions are appropriate. Did you want me to read the one for the Widows Walk or do you have a copy of it?
Let me pop that open.
You could also put it on the screen if you like.
That was the projects. Councillor Brown.
Through the chair, I'm wondering how you came to the decision to have those 2 particular things, the accessibility committee as well, be the things that are deferred.
Through the chair, they were the only projects that haven't already been started or in the works and could possibly be moved. And certainly it'd be nice to free up more staff time than just these two projects, but it just doesn't seem possible.
So the first one regarding the Widows Walk is that the 2026 City Hall Widows Walk project be deferred to 2027. Councillor Leithwood, seconded by Councillor Bird. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. And this one, that the development of an accessibility plan be deferred to 2027. By Councillor Leithwood, seconded by Councillor Bird. Any discussion? All those in favor? Is carried. And now we'll move on to the second quarter municipal services update.
Thank you, Mayor. So this update is going to focus mainly on the community wildfire resilience program and the action items that were identified in that report in 2024. And just to show you the progress that we made. Also have a quick update on WildSafe and roads and signs. So there were 53 total recommendations made in that report in 2024. 45 were identified as high priority, and they were organized through those 9 categories. So you can see we've made excellent progress in education, equipment, and residential fire smart. A lot of those are owned by our fire smart coordinator. I should mention, out of the 53 actions, only about 22 of them are actually owned by our fire smart coordinator. 21 are either owned by me and staff, and 8 of them through the RDCK or the fire department. So it's not simply on fire smart that these are getting done. So we can move on to the next screen. So the successes of Coach Morgan is our fire smart coordinator. She has done 28 home assessments so far this year, 2 neighborhood assessments, or 6 more neighborhood assessments to go. And we're targeting 20 assessments this quarter. We are fully funded through the end of next year. So the Kaslo Fire Smart program is in great shape. Beyond that is up to the province, and it's a giant unknown right now whether we'll get additional funding beyond 2027. But excellent work in the education area. Interagency cooperation and equipment, again, successes. We work well with our fire department, the neighborhood collectives, village, and we've done some work on the PTUs, the fire treatment units. We have had 2 prescriptions and 3 small treatments completed, 1 below Marina Ave and 1 up further up the river trail. That is a picture showing Morgan on the far right when she gave her presentation at the Wildfire Resiliency and Training Summit. Both her and Nick attended that summit, and we hope to get the resources to be able to attend next year. So the holes in the plan and where we haven't made good progress are on those 3 areas: legislation, planning, development, emergency planning, and water. And a lot of that are actions on myself or my staff or staff in the building, working with the RDCK, and looking at things like bylaws. So it's going to depend on prioritization on whether we can get to these actions or not. But this, I should say, the CWRP is due to be updated in 2029. We should start in 2028, but it's a 5-year cycle. That's fine. WildSafe. So if you've been on Kaslo Facebook, you've noticed there's been cougars in town. So Nikita Bowmeister, she provided me this information. She's been pretty active on Facebook, educating the public on what to do with cougars. So I do appreciate that. She has done 2 bin tagging assessments throughout town. The second assessment, she did tag 6 bins, and this is where the public leave out garbage or recycling the night before collection. And just to remind the public that recycling bins are adjustments, even though it's not garbage. Nikita has worked or has communicated with the food hub. We're trying to get the food cleaning program instantiated this year, which would be awesome. Fire Smart Target and Fire Smart and Keegan and Well Safe have teamed up at our markets. And there's been a couple education, or one is sustained education at the Wildwood Discovery Program, one of my daughters. And Nikita will be giving us some education sessions later this month. So streets and signs, we did have a test program with the speed radar. I think generally the public appreciated it. It was visible. I think some of the things that I'd like to see would be data collection and understand how many speeders were out there. That piece of equipment didn't have data collection. But at least as far as awareness goes, I think it was super valuable. So I guess the open question will be, how do we want to proceed? If we want to run this again. I should say that we did get that equipment for free from Kaslo Mode. So that was appreciated. Street sign upgrades. I'm working with ICBC right now on the reimbursement process. We need to get the work completed by the end of March of next year. Based on my discussions with suppliers and lead times, that won't be an issue. We're talking a small number of weeks for lead times on signs. So the next step will be assessing the signs in town. There's almost 400 of them, with 63 of them listed in the ICBC report. I've also reached out to ICBC and the ministry on potentially doing a cost sharing program of pedestrian lights at Highway 31A right when the speed zone slows down. So that's the
Great. Any questions? Councillor Leacould.
To the chair. The wildfire response guide, is that the village does that, or is that the RDCK do that?
Chief, through the chair, Mike defers to Ian. Were you here when this plan was? I actually don't know.
Yes, it was coordinated through the RCK as far as I know, because there are plans throughout the RCK for different areas. But I can't recall how it was funded at the time. If it was a village made a contribution or if it was full RCK, but then what the plan is, Kaslo Area D.
Councillor Bird.
Yep, through the chair. So I noted in the report that there's under interagency cooperation and equipment, you're talking about the fire committee is RDCK, Kaslo Fire Department, Kaslo Community Forest, Village of Kaslo, Bayview and Pine Ridge Collective Advocates. Just wondering why the downtown one advocate was never invited.
The chair, I will find out. I've been at one of those committee meetings, and there's also a regional Park Smart representative there as well, running the meeting. So I will find out. I don't know why.
I do have a question on the signage one. Are the signs just replacements for ones that are worn out, or are there any new sign placements?
We have three categories. So replacements, moving signs to more appropriate locations, and branding ones.
Okay. Thank you. Right, so then we'll move on. If there are no more questions, move on to the second quarter financial report. CEO Baker.
Thank you, Mayor Hewitt. Put the just leave it to you here. Do it, you want to do it. So I don't know if the presentation is showing online, but I'll take you through it. So is that viewing online?
It's sharing.
Okay. Okay, so okay. Executive summary, $3.75 million in total revenue, 1.84 in expenses, difference of 1.91 million. So obviously our expense is far less than the revenue we brought in. And the major reason for that is because funds haven't been transferred from our reserves or other accounts into the operating budget because projects have not progressed to the point to which it's necessary. So projects, including capital projects, are amalgamated into the operating budget. So hence you see a major difference between revenue and expenses. Go down. The good news on that last slide, though, is that our business license revenue is at 100%. So general fund, we have about 45% of it is coming from property taxes. About 40% is coming from grants, and the other is a smattering of rentals and leases, sales of services, license and fees. And we have a table that breaks down for council revenue from all of it, the various different categories. It's also broken out operating expenses by department. Council and administrative costs would be the largest one, which includes your city hall staff as well as council expenditures, remuneration and expenses, budget of $800,000, and we're at about 50%, which is exactly where we should be for the middle of the year. And likewise for facilities, public works, recreation and culture, fleet and equipment. The other departments where we're not at about 50% would include supplies and services. One of the reasons for that is we had unexpected expenses related to employee relations. Protective services is low because we have not expensed all of the money through the Fire Smart program. And aerodrome is maxed out, but there's nothing surprising about that. Most of the expenses we would incur would happen at this time of year. Grass cutting will slow down. We've had regulatory signage installed, and so there's no concerns with the aerodrome. And then recreation and culture, we are under 50%, and that's related to projects. Utility funds are looking good. We have about $450,000 in revenue for the water utility and expenses of about $537,000. When it comes to the sewer system, revenues of $176,000, expenses of $56,000. And on the sewer side, that discrepancy is related to projects that have not yet been expensed to our operating budget yet. Reserves, transfers, and variances gives you a snapshot, and you can clearly see that year-to-date expenses for transfers and on the notable items and variances table, we're at $0 or low numbers relative to the budget, and all of that's because capital projects have not started to be expensed yet. And that is the second quarter financial report.
Are there any questions for CO Baker on that report? Okay, Councillor Leewood.
To the chair, what is unforeseen employee relations?
Yeah.
Oh,
Employee relations.
That's it.
yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? All right, so then that brings us to our consent agenda, and that is for non-controversial routine items which do not require discussion or debate. And they may be grouped together under a consent agenda and dealt with under one council resolution. Any member may request that an item be included on that it is included on the consent agenda be removed from the consent agenda and dealt with separately. Are there any of those three items that any members of council would like to make a motion other than what is provided in the report or clarification on? Right. So,
Looking for a motion that the consent agenda be adopted.
Okay, motion to adopt the consent agenda, Councillor Brown and Councillor Leewood. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's carried. No items removed, so we'll move into business and so we'll discuss this item and then maybe we'll take a brief break. And then come back for the rest of the agenda. So this one is the lease agreement with the Kootenai Lake Historical Society. So did you have a presentation for that, correct?
Thank you, Mayor Hewitt. So I'll walk you through the presentation, which is a reflection of the staff report you've received. So council has not been provided with a draft lease agreement for the visitor center with the Historical Society. At this point, we're simply trying to gauge from council what direction they'd like to go in. And so staff are going to highlight for you what the lease has looked like historically and what it might look like moving forward. And then with council's direction, we can draft a lease agreement, have a discussion with the Historical Society and come back to council, hopefully to seek approval or further direction. So purpose and background. Or perhaps I'll just skip, to the what we've had in the past. 5-year lease from 2021 through 2026. The Historical Society has operated the Visitor Center and Museum, and they are allowed to sublet spaces to other nonprofits as a fundraising measure. Today, the Society pays $304 a year through their lease agreement, as well as any taxes, utilities, day-to-day maintenance, and the village carries something called all-risk property insurance. I'm going to touch on some of these topics later in the slide, so bear with me. A key concern with the existing agreement would be that there's a clause providing an open-ended grant and aid of at least $1,500 per year for the society to provide janitorial services at the Moy Beach Park washrooms. There's no upset limit. So the society could provide an invoice to the village of any amount of at least $1,500. And according to the agreement, the village would be obligated to pay them that amount. So staff have concerns with having no upset limit on a grant and aid. Staff are recommending a triple net lease with a slight modification. So just to give you an idea of what a triple net lease is, there's 3 key factors in a lease. There's the maintenance, there's taxes, and there's insurance. In a triple net lease, the maintenance, the taxes, the insurance would be paid for by the tenant. We're going to make, though, a slight modification based on what the agreement has been historically. That being, the village has retained property insurance and has been responsible for all major capital. So that property insurance piece is key. That's the modification or the difference that's happened in the past. And it should probably be looked at. I'll talk about it in a minute. The society would be responsible for paying rent of $400 per year, increasing by 3% annually. The $400 per year base rate is being recommended because that's the village's cost annually to administer the lease. Includes things like meeting with the Historical Society, the work that's performed by our accounting staff. The society would also be responsible for applicable taxes. Bear with me, we'll talk about that in a bit. The utilities, so electrical power, any of their operating costs like internet, as well as toilet paper or janitorial supplies to clean the visitor center. Tenant and liability insurance, which I believe they already carry tenant insurance. And I have to seek clarification on whether they also have liability insurance. Routine maintenance, minor repairs, and use-related risks. So minor repairs might be a broken handle and someone needs to come in and take a screwdriver and tighten things back up. Or routine maintenance could be replacement of light bulbs. So rather than the village doing it, it would be the responsibility of the society. The village would retain certain responsibilities. We would have building and property insurance to protect the village. we would take care of major structural systems and capital renewal. So renewal would be things like flooring renewal or the light fixture, the ballast is gone. It's not worth replacing the ballast. We might as well replace it with an LED fixture. So flooring, light fixtures, and I would also add in there a water tank. So in the current agreement, as well as what's being proposed, the village would be responsible for those renewal items. That means that the village should make sure we have funds set aside to pay for these items when needed. We would also be responsible for approving significant heritage sensitive work that needs to occur. It's entirely possible that there's work that the society would like to see happen that would better support the service they provide. And the village also sees benefit in the work occurring. And the society could have access to grants that the village doesn't have access to. Similarly, the village could have access to grants that the society is not eligible for. And so with many of our agreements with our nonprofit tenants, there's always the opportunity for partnering or working together on major capital improvements. Staff are recommending a 10-year term with monthly rollover. So at the end of 10 years, if a new agreement hasn't been developed, then we simply proceed month to month. And one of the reasons for recommending a long-term lease rather than a 3-year or a 5-year would be to be providing the village as well as the tenant with some stability and opportunities to go after fundraising or grants to help improve the property. Staff reviewed the lease policy that council recently adopted and applied the public benefit matrix and found that they scored 29 out of 30. Policy states that if you're in the 21 to 30 range, then it supports a nominal or significantly reduced rent. The society operates the visitor center as well as archives and museum. They're extraordinary stewards of the SS Moyi, which is a national historical site and a significant local attraction for the village of Kaslo. They're open during the tourism season, volunteer run, and one of the few services of its kind in the area, including the West Kootenays. And obviously they fill a clear local gap for the village. If we put it into the regional context, there's over $1 billion in tourism spending that occurs and significant support from residents when it comes to visitors' contribution to our local economy. So the key issues that are before council would be the current grant and aid that's stipulated in the current lease agreement, providing no upset limit for washroom maintenance. For 2026, the society submitted an invoice of $2,175 plus GST, which was slightly higher than what we had been budgeted for at $1,500. So we're looking to remove that clause from the agreement or modify it so that we have predictability when it comes to the village's expenses. And would also recommend that council consider a low nominal lease fee for the society. Property taxes, although the agreement states that the society would be responsible for property taxes, council, I believe, is aware that you have granted a permissive tax exemption to the society. And although we're not able to fetter council's future decision with respect to permissive tax exemptions, I think there's at least an understanding that I believe it's for the next 5 years, council's agreed to apply that tax exemption. Currently, there's a $5 million in liability required. Does not cover any private rentals or sublets that the society participates in. But we should take a look at this to determine whether $5 million is the appropriate coverage. We should determine if the village should continue the all-risk property insurance or if the tenant should take on their all-risk property insurance and the village should simply have building and property insurance to protect itself. And then, of course, there would be indemnification clauses that need to be included in the agreement to make sure that the village is fully protected. So there's some work to be done and information to be gathered with respect to insurance. but it's not something that staff believe is, you know, should be decided on ad hoc of good practice here. The MIABC, the Municipal Insurance Association, provides guidelines and recommendations to municipalities on what their lease agreements should include for insurance. And so what staff are recommending is that homework be done to determine what the recommendations are from the MIABC, and we follow those recommendations rather than developing ad hoc or customized solutions within different lease agreements, looking for some consistency in all of our lease agreements. Options then would be to approve in principle of this modified triple net lease, a 10-year term with month-to-month holdover, nominal rent at $400 a year with 3% annual increases, having the society remain responsible for taxes, align insurance requirements with Municipal Insurance Association recommendations, remove the automatic grant in aid for janitorial maintenance, and council's also provided with a couple of other options by way of the staff report. Financial considerations and next steps. A slide has been provided. Staff are recommending that approximately $3,000 be added to the building reserve in order to fund the maintenance obligations that the village currently has and are proposed within the new agreement, whereas currently the village is not contributing sufficient funds to its building asset renewal reserve. And so council might recall that every time we have an opportunity to take a look at a lease, including the thrift store, I believe was a good example, we increased our, or are planning to increase our contributions by $1,000 for that building. And in this case, staff are estimating it to be about $3,000 we should be putting aside. If council is agreeable, then we would proceed with issuing public notice of the disposition of the property through lease, as well as the financial assistance that the village provides through a nominal lease rate. So what needs to happen is we estimate what the assessed value is of the property and what a market rate would be for a property valued at approximately $800,000. Since the village, or it's being recommended that the village only charge $400 a year, that's the financial assistance being provided. And so we quantify what it is, we put it in our public notice so the public's aware of what's going on, and then we come back to council. You receive public input on disposition, as well as if the public has thoughts and feelings about the financial assistance. You receive input from the Historical Society on the terms that are outlined, and then council makes a final decision. That's the process, and I'll hand it back to council.
Great, thank you. So there are several one resolution here, a long one, with several components. But I wanted to speak to the $1,500 grant and aid. I think put it in at a fixed rate. I believe that we should be paying the Historical Society something for maintaining the beach washrooms, because that's not it's part of their building, but it's not part of their work. They've got washrooms in their facility that they maintain. Those ones are purely for tourist benefit or resident benefit when they're using the beach. So I think that my personal feeling is we should continue to, whether it's included in the lease or just have a separate agreement with them, that we will pay them that $1,500 for the maintenance. That's just a suggestion that I have for an amendment. Or would it be an amendment to the lease, or would it be pulled out of the lease? So it's
through the chair, I think council can go either way with it.
Yeah.
Maybe the easiest thing to do is include it in the agreement. So if you were looking to amend the recommendation, it would be something along the lines of develop a lease agreement with the society for the visitor center premise based on the terms and conditions of the staff report, but with a fixed rate of X dollars for the public washrooms. And so in that sense, staff would simply need direction on what that fixed rate would be.
Councillor Brown.
Through the chair. There was a slide talking about through MIABC that there might be some considerations about them subletting the space. Earlier, it talked about the ability to sublet as kind of a critical income generator for them. No? Okay, maybe I misunderstood that. So what was the piece about the subletting? Could you?
That was in the previous lease agreement. Is that correct?
Through the chair, the current lease agreement states that the tenant is allowed to sublease to other nonprofit organizations. And so I think council should maintain flexibility so that if the society comes across an opportunity where subleasing or renting for a special event or something makes sense to a nonprofit, then they don't have to come back to council for permission. So I think maintaining that clause to maintain flexibility would be a good idea.
Awesome. Thank you.
And Councillor Bird.
Through the chair, I actually have a question that about the expenses that the society is expected to pay, and I didn't see it on any of the lists as the water and sewer fees. You said utilities. You mentioned
That's utilities.
So that's included
Yeah.
water and sewer. So currently they are responsible for paying the water and sewer utilities.
Yeah.
Okay, just need clarification on that one. And final?
Go ahead.
I've also got it written down that I believe that because those washrooms facing the beach are pretty much advertised as public washrooms, then that it becomes a village responsibility to make sure that they're maintained, and thank goodness they're gonna do it, and we should make sure it's not painful financially to do it.
Right. So I'll let you insert the words that you had said. I didn't have I wasn't being able to write quick enough, but that's just in the first part of the resolution that staff develop a lease agreement with the Kootenay Lake Historical Society for the Visitor Center premises based on the terms and conditions recommended in the staff report dated June 24th, 2026, with the fixed rate. You mentioned adding wording about the fixed rate
Fixed rate for washrooms.
for washroom maintenance. Okay. And that staff issue public notice of disposition and financial assistance for the subject lease and return a final lease agreement to council for consideration following completion of the notice period, and further that the draft 2027 to 2031 financial plan include annual visitor center asset renewal reserve contributions starting at $3,050 in 2027, increasing by 3% annually, subject to annual budget review and asset management planning. By Councillor Leithwood, second by Councillor Bird. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion was carried.
Give it as well.
Oh, did you have a question, Councillor?
That's good.
Oh, okay.
Voted.
Oh, okay. I thought that it was a vote.
Voted.
Yeah. All right, so I think we're at 7:13, so we'll take a 5-minute break if that's long enough for people. And then we'll come back and discuss the periwinkle lease agreement.
Can't hear you.
Okay, are you with us, Rob?
I can hear you now.
Okay,
So I'll just quickly recap if that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, 5-year lease, 2021 to 2026 with the Independent School Society for the Children's Center. They're currently paying about $150 a year, as well as paying property taxes, utilities, water, sewer, routine maintenance. And the village is responsible for all risk property insurance. The agreement is going to expire, so we're looking for council direction, negotiating a new lease, and hopefully aligning the lease agreement with the MIABC insurance practices. So the slight difference between the previous lease agreement we just looked at would have a modified triple net lease, and the periwinkle would be that they would have an absolute triple net lease, meaning the village would not have any responsibility for maintenance or capital renewal. And so we don't need to put any money into a reserve, which makes it a true absolute triple net lease. The society would be responsible for their rent, taxes, utilities, insurance, routine maintenance repairs, structural repairs, all capital renewal, regulatory compliance, and any other costs related to the premise. And that's being recommended in order to minimize the cost and risk to the village. It's also being recommended over sale of the property to the Children's Center, to the society, because it is a historically significant piece of property within Vimy Park that staff imagine council would like to maintain ownership of. But similar to the previous lease, we're recommending a 10-year term with month-to-month holdover, which would provide the village and the society with stability. Staff took the benefit that the society provides to the community using the council approved lease policy and gave them a score of 29 out of 30, which indicates they could be eligible for a nominal or significantly reduced lease rate. The childcare services that they provide, needless to say, provide tremendous support for the working families, which is always a stress. And I know many of you have heard of challenges that folks have had trying to find childcare services, as well as provides workforce opportunities, early learning and development for our young children. Childcare opportunities in all of our small communities are limited, and having this opportunity provides a very much needed gap in the community. So when it comes to insurance and indemnity, staff are recommending we follow MIABC best practices, take a look at what coverage they would recommend, indemnity, work safety requirements. Also taking a look at property taxes. In the past, council has provided an exemption through the permissive tax exemption scheme and would recommend council continue to do so that you don't impede upon the rights of future councils to make different decisions. Might not actually be legal. I'd have to check, but I got a feeling you aren't legally allowed. So I believe they have a 5-year term currently. The valuation is a little more difficult in this situation because we don't have access to BC assessment for this specific property. It's combined with a bunch of other lots. So it's not easy to determine what the value of the property is. And that means it's not easy to determine the level of financial assistance that council would be providing if you granted a nominal lease, which means staff would need to contact an appraiser to come in and provide evaluation. Once we have that information, we could once again issue a notice of disposition by lease, as well as advise the public the value of the financial assistance that council would potentially be providing to the daycare or childcare center. Options would be to approve a 10-year absolute triple net lease, month-to-month holdover, $400 a year, which again reflects the village's basic cost to administer any lease with 3% annual increases. The society would be responsible for taxes unless exempted through a separate process. We'd apply MIADC insurance and indemnity clauses, provide public notice. This would preserve ownership of the property for the village and minimize any financial exposure that the village has. Other options are also provided by way of the staff report. And so the considerations and next steps would be currently there's a $150 per month rent, equating to approximately $1,800 per year. Staff are proposing that it be reduced to $400 per year with 3% increases. So it's actually a reduction in their base rent, not an increase. And again, this reflects the fact that the village would have no maintenance or capital renewal costs anticipated. The building would be all theirs to maintain. And that's it. Back to you.
You? All right. Does council have any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Brown.
Through the chair, similarly to how you were able to speak to the Historical Society, have you had, I'm assuming you had an opportunity to speak with Periwinkle, and did they share any thoughts on this as to whether this was something that they were, that worked well for them, or if there were any aspects to it that were challenging for them?
Through the chair, initially they were not happy that their rent would be increased from $150 a month to $400 a month. And then when they learned that it was $400 a year, they had a very different feeling about it. What I've shared with them is that although they might see, or they could possibly see, a reduction in their base rent, there could be changes on their insurance. So I don't think that they would cancel each other out, but if the village has property insurance to protect our interests, and then they insure the building and all of their belongings, they might see an increase in their insurance premiums. Right now, the village is paying to insure things that we probably shouldn't be insuring and paying for. And so they might see a difference there. So pros and cons. Overall, they felt comfortable with what was being presented. They were given the presentation that council has just received, and we had an email exchange, and they felt comfortable not participating as a delegation. So,
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions before I read the recommendation? Okay, so the recommendation is that staff develop a lease agreement with the Kootenay Lake Independent School Society for the Periwinkle Children's Center premises based on the terms and conditions recommended in the staff report dated June 24th, 2026, and further that staff issue public notice of disposition and financial assistance in accordance with the community charter before returning the draft lease agreement to council for final approval. By Councillor Bird, second by Councillor Lynn. Any discussion? All those in favor? Is carried. Next item is the revised purchase and sale agreement for the RV park. Did you want to speak to that, CEO Baker?
thank you, Mayor Hewitt. So, it's unfortunate that we had to take a step back with this purchase and sale agreement process, but when the other party suggested that They needed more time than to the end of October to complete all of the conditions. They needed through the end of February. Changing that condition wasn't something that staff could approve at our level. So certainly it needed to come back to council. And so that's one of the key changes that's being proposed by way of the staff report and the revised purchase and sale agreement. And the other key component would be slight revisions to the maps to ensure that they more clearly align with what the intent of the agreement was. And so just to highlight for council, the process that happened was we received the final purchase and sale agreement. It was signed by the village and provided to the village's lawyers. It was then held by them while they received an email from the other party stating, well, we just want to make sure that the maps that we provided for you are going to effectively enable and reflect what's in the agreement. So there were some minor changes they wanted to make. And so our lawyers held onto the agreement and did not share the signed agreement with the other party. Once we received the maps, and then we're also advised that they needed longer than to the end of October to complete all the conditions. It was clear that the purchase and sale agreement should come back to council. So that was the how this has transpired and why it's now back before council. So what you're being asked to consider is the changes to the dates for completing the conditions, as well as now you have fully up-to-date copies of the maps.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Brown.
Through the chair, would you mind walking us through some of the changes to the boundaries and the maps, just to ensure that we have a shared understanding of these boundaries that are changing?
Through the chair, you'll have to bear with me. My laptop's died, so I don't have access to anything right now. I don't think I'm the best person to actually point out any changes in the mapping. I think what I had noticed when I initially looked at the maps is I thought to me it wasn't super clear. Each map is intended for a different purpose. One is supposed to show the village's land, one shows the developer's land, one shows the land that the village would own once the transaction is completed. And I don't know if the color scheme they had used always lined up with what they had intended. And I think it was, when I looked at it, I could understand what it meant. And so from staff's perspective, we could work with it, and we could interpret it and understand. And there was mutually agreement between both parties on what they meant. But I think when they had the map developer or their planning staff look at it, they felt like the color coordination wasn't quite right. So no lot lines have moved. That's not possible. It's simply the words used and the colors that appear on all the different maps to make sure that it is as accurate as possible to the agreement. And we're not relying upon staff knowing and understanding what the map means. It should be more apparent to the everyday person. So it's just being clearer without changing lot lines or anything. Just colors and making sure the words are correct.
Supplemental?
I do. So later in our agenda, we'll be discussing another item that has to deal with South Beach and legal concerns that have been raised in a recent letter that has been sent. And I feel like that issue needs to be addressed, and those concerns need to either be validated or invalidated before we sign any agreement. And I would propose that we table this until after the August 1st date that we have been given to respond to that legal document that we were given.
Well, I would suggest we just table it till the end of the meeting because we don't know the result. We can't presuppose the result of that last agenda item.
Fair enough.
And then if there's a further motion, we'll do it at that time.
Sure.
That referring it to the end of the meeting here.
Yeah. After item. After item 10.1. So you're moving to do that then?
Oh, yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
as I suggested? Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
And a second? Okay. Any further any discussion on the referral to the end of the meeting? Okay, all those in favor? It's carried. All right, so then we will move on to 9.4, fees and charges bylaw, Murray Pearson Memorial Ballpark. Mr. Brown,
I will recuse myself as I am the president of Kaslo Baseball and Softball Association.
minutes will note that Councillor Brown has left the room. So far away because I don't want to turn off the fan. Right. Baker, did you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, I can, speak to that. So at the last council meeting, the same staff report provided to council, it reflects decisions and direction that council had provided to date. And at your last meeting, the decision was held in abeyance and some correspondence that council had received that morning from the association. And so the staff report now is back before council with the same recommendation for first, second, third reading. So this time, no different direction or change or no discussion has happened amongst council that would cause the recommendation to be any different. So I think your council's had an opportunity to digest the correspondence you received, could perhaps discuss it, and then provide staff with any direction if it's different from the recommendation.
Councillor Leafwood.
To the chair. I think the correspondent from KBSA raised some valid points. They talked about how, we're basing fees on cost recovery and those kind of things, which I understand, and also making sure we're compliant with our bylaws. However, we have a system in place where we're giving grants and aid to groups that come and want to put on some kind of event, which I think are valid and amazing events, and I think we should support them. But they often ask us to give them grants or waive fees and provide in-kind donations. So they're not actually contributing to the assets that we have, where we have an organization like the baseball, who is contributing a lot of time, money, and effort into one of our facilities. So I feel like we need a fairer system to recognize those groups like the baseball that provide that improvements to our assets. And we've developed this matrix for leases that are based on contributions to the community, what it provides. So I feel like I don't know why we can't do something like that here, because they do provide a lot of benefit to the community. So I would like to see a fairer system for how we charge groups like the baseball. So I'm not supporting the fees and charges at this time.
Councillor Bird.
Just through the chair, just a comment that it's an annual thing to revise the fees and charges bylaw. So a decision we make today could be overturned in 6 months from now. Easily enough. Just things, I appreciate your idea and I think it's a good one. I think we probably need to move along on this one, but if we keep your idea on the table and working it, then we can find a fairer system for all of these charges. And grants and aid, which has been a significant lack in the policy. And I think it really needs to be done. I'm just not sure putting this off anymore will make a big difference, but I would like to keep that idea alive.
And I think the other thing to recognize is this change, we've made the agreement with them for this year. So there's no change for this year. It's from 2027 onward is what this revision proposes. And I agree with you, but we've got to be careful about what we're doing. We've got to be able to treat everybody the same because there's other organizations that that do also give benefit, and it's not the same level playing field already. And I can think of several of them that we do not treat the same way. And, what budget impacts would it have if we're budgeting for a certain rental rate, which isn't achieved because we've moved it. So then it shifts it more onto taxation than on the users. Right. And that was the attempt, is that users would pay for the usage of the facilities. Everybody who rents something pays something. This is a per use thing. So I think we've got to be careful about making a blanket statement, but definitely a review of again. But as Councillor Bird has pointed out, we've been dealing with this for 6 months, I think, in one form or another. So I think it just moves it further down the road if we don't do something now and get something in place. Councillor Lang, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
You hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm finding this a very difficult subject because I do believe they need to pay something. We all do, whether we're hockey players, golfers, ball players, doesn't matter. We all have to pay something. I certainly recognize the amount of effort that went into revitalizing that field. It was one of my great wishes back in the day that something be done about it. They've done a tremendous job. I don't know the exact formula for what's fair to charge. Seems like we're close to reaching something that should be acceptable, but I'm not absolutely sure where to draw the line. I'm sorry, I'm not more help.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. So I'll read the recommendation, and if somebody wishes to move it. So the recommendation is that the fees and charges amendment bylaw number 1338, 2026 be read a first, second, and third time. By Councillor Bird, seconded by Councillor Lang. Any further discussion? All those in favor? And opposed? Would you like your negative vote recorded?
No.
All right, so that motion passes. So by Councillor.
Can I make a subsequent motion?
Yeah, just
I think we should meet with the baseball group because I feel like there's a lot of frustration on both the village side and the KBSA side. And even though we've moved this and we've recommended, a fee for this year, I think we want to work with this group. And they're very unhappy. And I'm not saying, and, I think there's probably been some miscommunication on both parts, but I think it would be a good move to ask if they want to have a meeting with us, and we can just put our cards on the table and they can. And we don't want them to decide to disband baseball and play anyway. So I think it would be good if we tried to have a meeting with them and just had a conversation with them.
Are you envisioning a committee of the whole meeting? Or?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like this month, like maybe sometime towards the end of August. But I feel like there's a lot of negative thoughts going on right now, and I think it would behoove us to have a sit down with them.
So your motion would be that we get staff to schedule a committee of the whole meeting with the sole purpose of meeting with KBSA representatives.
Yes. And they may not want to, but I think we could and extend an olive branch and have a conversation. So I'm moving that.
Yeah, a second. Any discussion? So we'll leave that to staff to coordinate. Okay, so all those in favor? That motion passes. Yes. The next item is the park regulation bylaw 1339. Gail Baker.
Yeah, share. Favorite died. Yes, thank you, Mayor Hewitt. We have a presentation that reflects the staff report. This is for Parks Regulation Bylaw 1339, which would repeal and replace the current Kaslo Municipal Parks bylaw. And why are we doing this, or why are staff proposing that it be replaced? Well, there's been some administrative issues that are created by the existing special event provisions that are in the parks bylaw. And there's also some items that could be added to a parks bylaw that would modernize it. So staff are recommending first, second, third readings on the proposed bylaw. To go into a bit more detail, the current bylaw falls short in a few ways. One would be that this bylaw from 12 years ago, it regulates parks, but it also attempts to regulate special events. And special events don't only exist in parks. They also can occur in streets or on our sidewalks, parking lots, the waterfront areas, and inside village-owned buildings. And so by constraining it to parks, we're limiting the usefulness of the provisions that are in that bylaw. And second, there's some operational gaps, meaning the way that the bylaw is written, council does not have the broader ability to control risk with respect to traffic and facilities, insurance, and public safety that are a part of special events. It also has blurred the lines between what's a routine park rental, where we might charge someone $30 to rent the ballpark, versus what's a special event. Because the only form we have is ingrained in the bylaw, and it's specifically called a special event application, and yet it's what's being used to rent the park for a ballpark or renting the gazebo or Front Street Park. So it's causing some confusion with how it's supposed to be used. And that confusion is because Schedule C is a special event permit application. So looking to repeal and replace rather than amendment. There's so many changes to be made to the definition, scope, authorization, schedules, enforcement, and structure that rather than making dozens of individual amendments, it makes more sense to modernize the bylaw, repeal and replace. So what's new within the proposed bylaw? One is we expand it beyond parks and into beaches, trails, boat launches, green spaces, cemeteries, and waterfront areas. Provides council with clearer authority with respect to all of these different areas, including how are we going to use permits or written authorizations, when are rental agreements used, posting of notices, and it aligns it with other council policies that are currently in the pipeline. Some of the provisions would be park hours. How do we close and who can close the parks? Are vehicles allowed? How do we deal with animals within our parks? What about the conduct of the public? Camping, fires, liquor, as well as what can occur on our waterfront properties. Notably, it removes Schedule C from the bylaw and simply refers to a permit process that staff would administer in accordance with the bylaw. And so staff would like to highlight for council one particular aspect, and that would be our beaches, our waterfront. Currently, we know that we have canoes and kayaks that are left on the beach over by the Moyie, as well as in Kaslo Bay. And so under the new bylaw, no one would be allowed to beach, store, leave a canoe, kayak, or watercraft on the beach, dock, or shoreline, except as allowed by notices that would be posted. Designated use or time limits that are set by the village, and that would be done through policy set by council. So council would say, we would like to regulate these areas. We don't want people leaving their private property on our beaches in the form of watercraft. However, we may allow it through policy and put up signage that communicates to the public where those types of activities are allowed. So the action that's needed to allow residents to leave their watercraft on the beach, the village would post signage, and without it, the watercraft would not be permitted to be left there. To make sure council understands that no enforcement of this bylaw would occur until policy is developed. So any existing canoes, kayaks, watercraft that are there, even if this bylaw is adopted at a future meeting, that doesn't mean staff are going to take action to start enforcing it. It simply means we're going to have to come back to you and find out through policy, what do you want your signage to say? What activities do you want to permit in these areas, or when and where do you want to allow watercraft to be stored? So the intent here is not to change anything at this point, but to allow council a mechanism to start deciding what you want. It also provides a cleaner approach to special events, keeps the parks bylaw focused on regulating parks. It allows us to have a special event policy, as well as internal procedures that would manage special events. That policy would cover special events not only in parks, but as well as on roads and public buildings. So next steps, financially, there's no financial implications at this point. It's simply asking for readings to be given to the bylaw. This bylaw is supported by the community charter in various different sections related to parks and public spaces and council's ability to regulate. And if adopted, staff would then make an effort to align our special event policy, our temporary road closure policy, as well as all of the internal procedures and forms that would fall out of all of this. So I will turn it back to council. Thank you.
So Baker, are there any questions? So Councillor Byrne first.
Through the chair. I appreciate the fact that staff's been having trouble with a special events policy and it's been mixing up you about parks. What I would like to see is when there is an issue where our current policies or regulations are not working, that staff come to us and say, this is hard for us. We're not able to administer this well. We have some suggestions, but what do you, as a council, suggest we attack it as a strategy? Like, the one thing about parks is it is a council priority, although a very late one, to create a parks and recreation master plan. And the vision for that is to bring in the public and especially user groups to help us craft a plan. You can also recall that there was a parks plan that was paid for probably about 10 years ago. Worth another look. I know it never got adopted, but it's extra information and along with a public process. Well, because for me, when it comes, I get the administration part. The tricky part, like basically I would say, keep the old bylaw and remove all reference to special events. That's an amendment I can live with for now. But I do not want to look at all these regulations without having it to be a community discussion, because these are community spaces. And just as an example, under the regulations proposed, I wouldn't be able to walk my dog in the park after dark. Just an example. Another one is kid could not make a sandcastle. Just saying, like, I think this is way premature. I totally appreciate the fact that there's been an administration bottleneck as far as special events and parks are concerned. Fine, that's a concern that should be brought to council. And then allow council to decide what strategy we should go for to solve that problem and maybe address something that matters to us.
Leaford? To the chair. I guess just a couple of, like, I agree with what you're saying. I would like more time to think about this, although I do understand why you're moving in this direction. And I know by being on the events committee, we've had a lot of issues lately with how things are popping up. I guess a couple of things that come to mind with this would be people often come with their boats, you know, to spend a day here. And they park sometimes in the lagoon or sometimes at the beach. Also, we have people, I think it's in the parking bylaw that somebody can park their boat for, is it 2 day, 48 hours at the wharf? Like, are any of these things going to be affected? And I also think there are a lot of people that do park their canoes and kayaks there. And I do know that it has been an issue over the years. But again, I think it would be good to get input from people. I agree.
Mr. Brown?
To the chair, I agree wholeheartedly. It just seems like there's a lot of really prescriptive and restrictive things all throughout. I also note sandcastles would no longer be allowed, children literally ripping up grass and counting lucky clovers, like all these things. It's just, I understand that it's not necessarily trying to stop that, but it is what it says. No person shall cut, trim, dig up, excavate, remove, damage, injure, deface, destroy, disturb, or tamper with any tree, shrub, flower, grass. I mean, to go through, and it does, it says sand, gravel, rock. It just feels like we're going way, way, way too far with this plan. And as is written, I could not support this.
All right, so
Can I move to table this while we all have had a chance to? I mean, I have to be honest, I've been busy the last few days, so I haven't read through the whole thing very extensively. So I would like a bit more time.
we'll refer it to the August meeting.
Or September, like depending on how busy the August meeting is, but I also support what Councillor Burr is saying.
So Councillor Leithwood has made a recommendation to refer it to the August meeting. Is there a second for that? Okay,
Make a motion
yeah, go ahead.
that we not consider the plan that is in front of us, but at a future meeting of council, we consider what is a good process for developing a more efficient and inclusive park regulation or bylaw.
I'll wait until staff has a chance to get that down and we'll have it read back. So you might have to repeat it. Usually, ideally, if you've got a motion, it does come written. Because it'll take more time for staff to be able to get it down when it's being verbalized.
That at a future date, council consider a parks regulation bylaw process, how it should be achieved and with whom. with how it should be achieved and with what input.
That at a future date, council consider a parks bylaw process, who it should be received and with what input, how it should be received, sorry. How it should be received and with what input,
And with what?
how it should be developed. And with what input.
Right. I'm gonna try something else on you. It's saying the same thing, but,
We have a second thought.
no, not yet.
Oh, Councillor Brown seconded it.
Well, I didn't take it until we knew
Oh.
what he was seconding. So I've written, schedule a meeting to determine the process for amending the parks regulation bylaw, including but not limited to a mechanism for gathering input.
Nice.
That okay? If you can read my chicken scratch there,
That's wonderful.
just the future meeting, and yeah, I just was trying to rephrase it so it sounded a little more. Yeah, thank you for letting me do that. All right, so that's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Motion is carried. And 9.6 is Kaslo Shipyard Company Limited notice of termination of tenancy. There's a staff report regarding that. Did you want to speak to that at all? Does anybody need CEO to go over the staff report? Okay, so the recommendation is that the village refrain from taking legal action to recover unpaid taxes owing from the Kaslo Shipyard Company Limited under their lease with the village. Moved by Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor Brown. Any discussion? Would it be helpful to have CAO to go over the staff report?
Can you read the recommendation again? Sorry.
So that the village refrain from taking legal action to recover unpaid taxes owing from the Kaslo Shipyard Company Limited under their lease with the village.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't find my.
Discussion, Councillor Burt?
Through the chair. Yes, I think it might be a good idea to at least explain why we would not go under unpaid taxes. There's a reason.
So through the chair, in order to go after the taxes, the village would need to sue the company. And so there's going to be legal costs associated with suing this business. And staff have the impression that they're not going to be able to pay them. And so you're going to be in a position where you'll have to spend additional resources in order to try to recover it through forceful means. So it's a matter of whether council believes that there's sufficient staff time and funding available for the village to invest in seeking legal action. Which at this time, it's unknown how successful the village might be. But you would definitely need to either make a budget amendment or you would definitely need to make a budget amendment and allocate maybe $20,000-$30,000 towards legal fees to go after this.
So as a bit of a backstory, they had previously not been paying the taxes because they were not, BC assessment didn't recognize them as a leaseholder. And that has just surfaced. And now, because of the value of that property, the taxes are very high, and they've just kicked in this year. And because it's a private business, we can't waive it. You cannot give benefit to business. And that's what's outlined in the staff report. And that's why, rather than spending many thousands of dollars to recover probably less than that in taxes, is not really prudent. So, Councillor Brown?
Through the chair, I appreciate that, those numbers, to put into perspective how much we would actually be getting back. Because in principle, waiving this tax could incentivize other people to act as such, recognizing that we may not be able to go after them depending on what the number is. So in that sense, in principle, it would seem that we would want to challenge that. But I recognize staff time, and we're looking at those finances and we're looking at such large numbers, that it's a prudent thing to do. And I suppose just hope that it doesn't set a precedent kind of thing.
Well, I think what sets this apart is that it is a lease of village-owned land,
Mhm.
and any other taxpayer has to pay their taxes. So, and because this is the first year, and the individual wasn't aware of it until this year, and we weren't aware of it until this year.
Yeah.
So that had been moved and seconded, correct? Or no?
Yeah, let's move by Rob, seconded by.
Okay, that's right. Yeah. Okay, any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Is carried. So that brings us to item 10.1 under other business. Councillor Brown.
To the chair, I put forward this correspondence for action in reference to an email that we got from IFord Partners in relation to the RV park purchase and sale agreement. I asked the council discuss that legal letter from Natalie J. Baker on behalf of the working group. And that we give staff direction to reply before August 1st. In the letter, we were given that date to reply. Otherwise, they had then said that if we did not respond, they will file an application for judicial review to challenge the agreement. So I think this certainly warrants a discussion of council to give staff direction on how we want to proceed, whether that be to answer this or not. And I also personally, in seeing, that there are differences between the agreement that was signed and the agreement as we, now seen it. There's different schedules and things that are included. And many of the points that are brought up in this email are things that I personally find concerning and that I would want to have addressed before moving forward with any further action in the RV park. And so, personally, I would like to see staff reply to this, and specifically reply to each concern item by item as to why they feel that these concerns based on our lawyers' legal views, so that there is an understanding that we are engaging and that we're going to actually look into these concerns. I think a judicial review on this that challenges this agreement elevates this conversation beyond this table. And at this point, I feel like trying to have conversations where we can look into these concerns and ameliorate or find that they are legitimate would be integral to the integrity of this project moving forward.
Councillor Brown? Discussion on the item? So actually there is, motion.
Motion is to discuss.
There's two different pieces. So, okay. So that the man. All right, that council, no, discuss and. Okay, so that. The recommendation wouldn't be what it's written because this is,
Up here.
because this is council's discussing it, so you would, um. Give staff direction to reply to the letter from Natalie Baker, removing the reference to council discuss the legal letter, because we're doing that now. You've introduced it, so we'll
Yeah.
discuss it. So that's what I would suggest, is just remove that part from the motion, because that's happening.
Good point.
If that's, so that's what you would like to move as,
Yeah.
as amended from what you had in there?
I am okay with amending it as such, as long as that discussion occurs.
Yeah. And do you have a
Second for discussion?
Okay, discussion, Councillor Burt?
So part of what this letter is pointing out, and one that I looked into and I got some other advice, and it kind of makes sense, is while it is true that it is, council has sole and unfettered ability to create a new zoning from the former industrial to something new. While that is, we have sole and unfettered authority to do that, which language also coincident, I did not know this, means that having said that in an agreement, it means we can't be sued for not doing it or doing it. That's what sole and unfettered means. So while that is true, that we could not enact a bylaw and refrain and just keep it industrial, or what is a point that's made in this letter that really does get me is that there is a line in the purchase and sale agreement that says that we should make a new zoning bylaw according to the terms of Schedule H. And so what that means is we have the sole and unfettered discretion to adopt bylaw or not. But having adopted something, we are constrained, according to this purchase and sale agreement, to following the terms that are spelled out, Schedule 8. And I do have a little suggestion on that one, is to change the wording from according to the terms of Schedule H. Just change it to substantially according to the terms of Schedule H and such other terms as council may determine. So that frees us up from taking Schedule H as our template rather exclusively, because it says according to the terms, which, as Mr. Wells has pointed out, weren't even filled in at this point. So if we haven't discussed them, we don't know what source they're going to use, although I can guess. So yeah, I do agree that this letter does pose that on the one hand, council cannot enact a new zoning bylaw, and on the other hand, should they try to change the zoning under this agreement, we'd have to follow Schedule H's terms, which I think is unduly and unnecessarily constraining what we might do.
Councillor Leithwood.
To the chair. I feel like some parts of this letter are premature. I mean, we've created a document where the developer is required to follow several conditions. So until we kind of know whether they can even meet those conditions, some of this may or may not move forward. So I don't know how we can answer some of these questions. I wonder, so the items are in Schedule H. Where did those come from?
Through the chair, so communications would have occurred between staff and the developer at some point to try to hash out what the general terms might look like. And then the village's lawyer has had conversations with the developer's lawyer to try to narrow down what those terms might look like. It's worth commenting that, the reason why those terms are listed in the schedule is so that the developer is being upfront with the village with the terms that they're looking for. Doesn't mean that these are exactly what the zoning bylaw is going to state. That's going to come later when council looks at the zoning bylaw to determine exactly what's going to be in there. And there's going to be a back and forth to narrow down exactly what it all is. But it wouldn't be fair if the developer upfront didn't advise the village what it's looking for. And the village has said like, well, I don't know if we want to sign this purchase and sale agreement. I don't know what you're going to want to put in that zoning bylaw. And so they've given us, to their best guess, what would be in the zoning bylaw. There's still a process that needs to unfold. Council is still completely unfettered and has the right to adopt a zoning bylaw or not adopt it, or go back to the developer and say, these 3 ones look okay, but we want to change the wording on these 4. Like, the process still has to happen. But again, the purchase and sale agreement is there to make sure everyone's being upfront with each other on what the processes are that will occur later. And so I think some of the concerns that council's talking about at this meeting are going to be worked out in the wash when we get to the zoning bylaw process. And maybe just go one step further. If the developer and the village can't come to an agreement on the zoning bylaw, well, then the land transaction can't complete. So you're not obligated in any way, other than now you have a general idea of what the developer's looking for. Thank you.
Councillor Leafwood, you did share one more question. So the section about contaminated sites. So what is the village's responsibility as far as contaminated sites? Isn't it just to disclose that the site could possibly have some contamination? Or
Through the chair, yeah, it'd be my uneducated and not expert understanding is that we're required, when we sell land, we're required to disclose to the receiving party that this is a site that may have contamination, and to the best of our knowledge, this is what the contamination is. Likewise, the other party, if they're selling us land, has to disclose it to us. And so staff are not the subject matter experts on this, and there could be more to it, but the guidance that we've received has reflected in the purchase and sale agreement that's before council, and that guidance has been vetted through our lawyers. And so if council has concerns about contaminated sites, then staff would recommend that the budget be amended, sufficient money be set aside for a legal review, and we have our lawyers take a look at this. Staff are concerned at the amount of cost that the village could absorb into your operating budget if directions provided to staff to start using lawyers to look at this. Very quickly, your operating budget is going to get spent. It's up to $450 an hour to have a lawyer look at this. So if council wants this looked at, you also need to set aside money and amend the budget.
Going to go to Councillor Lang because I've been looking at documents. I've been not looking at the screen. Did you have anything that you wanted to raise?
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, through the chair, I'd just like to echo the CAO's comments that the time and energy and money and staff hours that has gone into this process seems to me to be absolutely ridiculous. the process needs to be allowed to play out. We can't keep going backwards and getting into hypotheticals about what if this happens, what if that happens. There's a process for allowing this to play out, gives council lots of opportunity to back out at whatever point they find things are not to their liking. But we can't keep spending money and spending staff resources on this one issue when there's so much else going on in the community that needs our attention. So I would hope that council would just relax and let things go forward in an orderly fashion till we reach some genuine roadblocks instead of sort of dreaming up excuses for putting a stick in the spokes. Thanks a lot.
Councillor Brown.
Through the chair, I too am fatigued with this conversation. But I think that it is a very important conversation and that it is our job to do our due diligence when we look at these kind of projects that are generationally changing our community. So while I also share your fatigue, while I also do not want to continue to pour funds into this project, I don't think it's something we asked for. It's something that we are responding to. When we see legal documents that are changed from what we signed, it is our due diligence. It is our responsibility to highlight that. You know, we've had concerns about the OCP that might have changed that enabled this. We've had all these concerns and trust is eroding and breaking down. And if we don't take these steps to be able to build that trust in the process, in the development, in all of this, then I don't believe that we are faithfully executing the role that we were being put into. I don't cherish this. I do not want to put more money into this. I do not want to put more staff time. I'd rather see an accessibility plan made personally. But this is what is before us. And we don't have the opportunity to not walk through this process. And so I would suggest as this is what is before us, that we, on behalf of our constituents, do everything that we can to ensure that they are faithfully being represented through this process. Thank you.
Councillor Bird.
Through the chair, as far as spending $450 an hour on a lawyer, it seems to me that our budget has already been, through this meeting, been reduced in terms of dollars, 30,000 for the widow's walk and 100, forget what the number was for the accessibility plan. We've already saved money just sitting here. So I am fully in favor of this going to a lawyer and getting a response, hopefully by August 1st, or at least the letter saying it's being worked on. And with holidays and time constraints, it'll be more like August 15th, something like that. But some kind of response that responds to the seriousness of this particular investigation from another lawyer.
Councillor Leafwood.
To the chair, the two projects that we deferred to next year, aren't those from reserves or aren't there grants? So they're not really coming out of our operating budget. But I mean, I hear what you're saying, but that's just want to
We're not
clarify.
spending money on this.
I think that some of the stuff that has been raised are items that are going to be addressed as we go through the process. We're trying to put the cart before the horse by asking things to be dealt with in advance of them arriving or getting the fulsome studies that the developer is required to do to address some of these things. And Schedule 8, it is our responsibility. That's what they want, but we get to decide what's going in that zoning, what the terms of it are. that's their wish list, as CEO Baker indicated. It's not what we've enacted at all. We have to go through that public process to do a rezoning, which will bring the public into it. And that is one of the conditions that's in the agreement. It's not just because it's written in here that that's what they want. That doesn't mean that's what they're going to get. And there's also an RV park bylaw, which we can use to control other aspects of what happens in that RV park. Is that correct? That is one of the things.
Say that.
An RV park bylaw, not just the rezoning, but the RV park bylaw itself, because ours would take precedence over anything that the strata, our bylaws take precedence over strata bylaws. Is that correct?
Yeah, so all of that's correct. So the zoning would be enacted and would include RV park regulations. So it
Okay.
would be, we would do it in one. We wouldn't have a
Okay.
zoning bylaw and an RV park bylaw. We would make it one, and it would be specific to this piece of land.
Okay. A dedicated zoning for that, okay? So Councillor Brown, I saw your hand first.
Through the chair. I understand that our understanding is that this does not fetter our abilities. In the letter, it specifically says, in addition, with respect to clause 3.3, which requires the village to modify or enact a bylaw for regulating RV park land use consistent with the zoning bylaws terms, we note that these changes appear to fetter council's legislative discretion in respect to zoning, notwithstanding the non-derogation provisions, and it goes forward. So this, we have an opinion that it does not fetter. We have an opinion, a legal opinion that it does fetter. And ultimately, the communication says that this will then go to a judiciary to decide between the two. And so our deciding to not put funds into this doesn't mean that this doesn't get addressed. It means that it will get addressed in the court of law, according to this letter. And so I suppose I'm suggesting a proactive approach as opposed to just waiting to see what comes of it. And obviously that proactive approach is at the cost to a taxpayer. And I think that, my understanding is that this is something that the taxpayers are asking us to do. We have a group of citizens who have brought this forward and have legal representation. So I would just highlight that us deciding to take no action does not mean that no action will be taken.
Councillor Leakley.
To the chair. We also did, however, send the purchase and sale agreement to our lawyer who is, has experience in land planning. I can't imagine that he would put, or she would put anything in the agreement that he didn't feel was proper language. And so we can probably go to a third lawyer and get a different opinion. So I think at some point we have to trust our lawyers that we hire, that they're leading us in the right direction.
I just wonder if a simpler way, because the developer has been very agreeable to making amendments at the request of the village. He's made quite a number of concessions at our request, and he didn't push back. Whether we share the legal opinion, because it's now on a public agenda, share that with the developer and ask if there are any things in there that we can walk back. Right? Rather than spending, it still achieves the same goal if we can arrive at a mutually agreeable solution to that, rather than spending money and on another legal opinion. And as Councillor Leakwood said, we involve a third lawyer. A third lawyer might have a different opinion. That could be a way forward. And we might get the result we want without having to to go with the legal, it would take a bit of staff time just to communicate with the developer. That's just a suggestion it doesn't put pressure on the budget and as much pressure on staff. It actually puts it back on the developer to respond to the concerns that the public has and that members of council share. So, but we do have a motion before us. Can you read that back? Because I know we changed it slightly.
Council gives staff direction to respond to Natalie J. Baker on behalf of the South Beach Working Group.
Sorry, sorry,
That was the one that she amended of Matt's.
yeah, we should take out anything to do with South Beach Working Group.
Okay.
Right, because it would be coming from us then.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were adding, okay.
And probably shouldn't be referring to Natalie Baker. That's Iford.
Right.
The company is who we should be referring to. Iford Partners. So the council, the motion seconded was that council gives staff direction to respond to Iford Partners regarding the RV park purchase and sale agreement before October 1st, 2026. And maybe it's just a quick comment here. Staff are not subject matter experts on any of this. And so staff aren't in a position to respond to a law firm about their legal commentary. It needs to go to our lawyers if you want a response to this firm. It needs to go to our lawyers and they need to provide commentary. I think Councillor Brown commented, wrote it down, staff respond to Iford based on our lawyers' views that are being raised in this letter. So my hope here is that council understands staff should not be responding. Our lawyers should be responding. And that's going to take money in order for them to review and respond.
Mr. Brown?
To the chair, were this to go to judicial review, would that cost money to the village as well?
Through the chair, not necessarily. So judicial review would take a look, not at the purchase and sale agreement. There's an enormous amount of case law where the courts don't look at council's decision and say that was the wrong decision. They look at your process. And so to date, the process that council has followed to develop the purchase and sale agreement, the court could look at it and say, oh, you misstepped here and there, and we think maybe you should take a look at this again and go through your process again. That would be the extent of it. And once we receive that decision, we would forward it on to our lawyers and ask for guidance on how we should proceed. So there would probably be some expense that we would incur. We wouldn't end up in a court of law necessarily needing to defend ourselves. And they're not concerned about the content, they're concerned about the process. And from my impression that I have from our lawyers is that there's nothing in our process that is not on the up and up. I could maybe just go one step further. There's other processes that might unfold later on, including adoption of a zoning bylaw. And so that could be subject to a judicial review if we don't follow the proper process. But as far as our purchase and sale agreement, I'm not too sure if a judge would even take a look at it at this point.
Okay. So again, I'll have you read, just bear with me. I'll have you read the resolution again, just so we're all totally clear.
That council gives staff direction to respond to Iford Partners LLP regarding the RV park purchase and sale agreement before August 1st, 2026. But again, staff cannot respond.
Right. Councillor Leaflet.
Through the chair to CO Baker. I know you can't respond to the letter, but do you see anything in the letter that you don't think is going to unfold through the purchase and sale agreement?
So one of their comments, they're bringing into question the OCP, and if this RV park, and not just the RV park, but the construction that would take place as a part of it, is that what the OCP envisioned? So that piece of it I can't comment on. You can have our lawyer go through our OCP again and determine if there might be something there. The contaminated sites, sorry, can you pose your question again?
Well, if you think anything in these questions are not going to unfold through the process we're following
I
with
think
purchase and sale.
That's one for sure. Because it has nothing to do with the process moving forward. The contaminated sites, I don't think there's much, the purchase and sale agreement lays out that I forget the words, but that we're both accepting the site as is. Our lawyers indicated that the clauses that are included are fine. And so I can't say that anything else would come later on regarding contaminated sites. The development permit question, I don't really have any comment on. I mean, there will be a development permit later down the road. I don't really know what to say about this lawyer's opinion on that topic. And then the Section 510 resolution with respect to strata lots and the size, and that'll unfold when there's subdivision or consolidation and subdivision, and that'd be about it. It's just, yeah, the one that would be related to Section 510 and the development permit.
So we all know what the moved and seconded resolution is and have heard staff's response. So is there any further discussion on the motion? Councilor Brett.
To the chair, perhaps this motion, in hearing what staff have said, would be better amended to have not staff reply, but to have, because at this point, staff clearly told us there's nothing for us to reply. So if someone's going to reply, that it would be our lawyers. So I would amend it then to be our lawyers. If that's who has the information and can speak to this, then I would amend it to be the most, capable respondent. Or not even capable, but like who has the most quality. Yeah, qualified. That's the word.
Yeah. Would that be?
So I think Counselor may be jumping the gun here a bit. You don't know if you want your lawyer to respond to it, and our lawyer's advice might be that you don't respond to it.
Interesting.
I think what might make sense is for council to consider referring the letter to our village's legal counsel and amending the financial plan to allocate X number of dollars towards legal expenses related to this issue. So I think referring it to legal counsel is where you're heading by the sounds of your discussion. But funding also needs to be set aside.
All right. So now we'll read was the seconder agreeable to the?
Through the chair, I understand where we're going with
Yes.
this. I think we'd like to all of your amended motion.
Yeah.
So maybe before we read the amended motion, perhaps discussion about how much money council is agreeable to allocating towards this. Because there could be some back and forth, and I suspect that throughout the process for the remainder of the year, there could be other matters that council wants to refer to legal. And so I believe perhaps I don't know if it was a staff report or an email, I suggested that, $6,000 might be a lump sum of money that the financial plan be amended with from surplus. And that should give you lots of wiggle room as this unfolds throughout the rest of the year. So the motion might sound something like the council consider, sorry, no, the council, no, that the village refer the letter from Iford Partners LLP dated June 26th to the village's legal counsel. And further, that the financial plan be amended to allocate $6,000 towards legal expenses related to the RV park purchase and sale agreement. Off the top of my head.
So my discussion will be that we're referring it back to our lawyer who worked with the other team's lawyer to develop this. So are we going to have him come back and say, I was wrong, that I gave you bad advice?
If indeed it was, then I would suggest, say yes, you're asking me. I've had to admit when I was wrong before.
Right.
I think there's some due diligence on our part, and that I think is just one thing we can do that for our due diligence in the matter, and that is, yes, spend money, get the lawyer to look at this. I consider that due diligence for a long-term issue.
Right, Councillor Lang, I've been ignoring you again. Sorry. Did you have any further comment? You're good? Okay. All right, so we all heard the motion and ready to call the question? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? I'm opposed. But I would like to, what I had indicated earlier, that I would like to put this back in the developers court so they can, and see whether, refer the letter to them and see if they can come back with any proposed amendments that would relieve the issues that there are with the agreement. And I will say that the agreement wasn't changed after it was signed, other than the mapping. The mapping was cleaned up, but otherwise the agreement is what it was as it was signed, and council did see that agreement.
Okay.
So I'll move that this correspondence be referred to QP Developments, and that staff has a conversation with them about it, or what would be the appropriate thing. I would like to.
Yeah, I think it's just that the village refer the letter from Iford Partners LLP dated June 26, 2026 regarding the RV park purchase and sale agreement to QP Developments for their review and comment, and then staff can report back to council on what their response is.
And ideally, they would have a chance to look at it before August 1st. Just that was the deadline that the solicitor had put in, Iford Partners had put in.
Maybe just a comment. So QP Developments might come back and comment. Certainly, there's going to be no response to Iford Partners.
No.
Until council provides any further direction. Just to make sure it's clear that that August 1st deadline will come and go.
Right. But I think what's my understanding is council wants the items raised by Iford addressed, and perhaps there are simple answers that could be provided, amendments could be made, and that might be agreeable to council. And that could be what comes back to us at our August meeting. Because we're already being asked to look at the amended agreement. And well, we won't talk about the agreement now because we'll talk about that next. I'll make that motion, but I didn't have a seconder, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can you read that back?
But a letter from Iford Partners LLP dated June 26, 2026, we referred to QP Developments for their review and comment, and that staff report back to council.
Any further discussion?
Was that second?
By Councillor Lincoln.
Okay.
All those in favor? Okay. Right.
Was that carried or defeated?
It would be defeated because, well, although no, Councillor Lang has not raised his hand. So, okay, so I've called for opposed. So then,
No, you didn't call for opposed. No, you.
oh, didn't I? Oh, okay. Okay, sorry. All those opposed, I thought I saw you both raise your hands, but okay. So, in favor, there was just Councillor Leakwood then, and opposed. Okay, and so by not raising your hand, then you're voting in the affirmative, right? Is that
Correct.
okay? Just, I have to be sure.
I just lost my sound for a bit there, so I got a bit confused.
Okay. Right, so that passes, and then we'll go back to item 9.3, and I'm going to recommend that gets referred to the August meeting so that we have response from the correspondence we're forwarding to the developer, so that we're not jumping ahead. And then, because it may be further amended from what it is currently. So make the motion to refer that to the August meeting.
Second.
Discussion? Councillor Bird, yeah.
Through the chair, just that I would like to be able to provide some written input of my own on, haven't really had the opportunity to, wasn't invited to, like, to look at this signed purchase and sale agreement, but I do have comments on it, and I would like to be able to give my comments about the content of the purchase and sale agreement. So if it's being referred to a future meeting, then because it may be amended, I just feel like I've never had a opportunity to properly read through it and comment, because it was presented to us one day and it was virtually signed the next or the day. I don't know how quickly it happened, but a week later when I asked, can we comment on this? And it was already signed. So there was never any formal, it was an information item, and I've never had a chance to make my own commentary on it, and I'd like the opportunity to do that. So the motion is to defer it to the August meeting. Happy to do that. I'm not sure I see a place for my ability to have a comment on the content. If it's gonna get amended anyway, this is my opportunity for saying, I have a few suggestions. I'm not sure how I can do that. And I do think as a counselor, I should have some kind of mechanism to be able to make a comment.
Well, this has been more that it's been a couple year long process at minimum. And the information that's gone into the formal agreement are the items that council did discuss. And the IFRD has noted the items that are changed. So we had agreed on everything else up until that point. Even, you may not have agreed with the things, but you had the opportunity to comment over the last couple of years on it. So August of last year was substantially what is presented to us today with those few changes that IFRD is questioning. Correct? So we, as a majority of council, agreed to proceed with the agreement that as it is presented, with the few changes that seem to be causing some disturbance.
If I may,
Yes.
a little rebuttal here. The way you're putting it makes it sound as if you are fully confident that the transition from our commentary and our discussions found its way faithfully and without any error or equivocation in the final document. I have some very minor equivocations I'd like to put that were never part of the discussion, but I'm looking at a final document that's based on 2 years of discussion. And there's absolutely no way that it is faithful, transparent, and according to that, just because it's human beings doing this. So I still feel like once it gets to the point of a purchase and sale agreement, despite the fact that you are totally correct that we've had lots of chances for input, I feel like I should have the chance to have some input on the actual signed final document. And that's all I'm, not even more than a page. I just would like to be able to comment on the purchase and sale agreement. Now that I know that this is a living document and it changes and can change as long as two people, as long as the other party agrees. When this came up to us the first time, that I just understood it was a done deal and I had no right to comment. I would like that right to comment. I don't see why I don't get it.
Well, I don't think there's anything that's stopping you from providing your comment through to the CAO or any other member of council in between now and the August meeting. And yeah. So what motion are we on now? Oh, referral. It was just referral to the August meeting. So any further discussion on the referral on actually be straight away from discussing the merits of referral only, but on referral. All those in favor? Opposed? Oh, it was, so Councillor Lang, you were sort of slow on your raising your hand, or were you in favor or opposed?
Yes, yes,
In favor.
I am in favor.
Okay. That motion passes. So we had no motion served, and then we have our information items. There is no discussion on because they're for information only. Now that brings us to our second public input. So our second public input session is now available. So speakers may address council only on items of business appearing on tonight's agenda. This is limited to 10 minutes. And when I call your name, you will have the opportunity to provide your input. Please begin by stating your name and place of residence, and you will have up to 2 minutes to speak. After all speakers have provided their input, council members will have the opportunity to ask brief clarifying questions through the chair. And Council will not engage in debate, and if the speaker's input relates to operational issues, staff would be happy to assist them during regular business hours. In the room, are there any questions? Okay, so I've got two, just to state your name and your place of residence. So we'll go with you first, Kit. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Kaslo, living in Catherine. I just want to go back on something that was talked about there on this. I am up on the environmental issues of BC, so don't put me down on that. I know that 2018, a lot of debris and environmental debris was removed from that site and put into a building lot just down the road from where I live. Concrete, all kinds of mess. And because you know that there's a possibility of a contaminated site, even if you sell it and the developer then finds it, the village can be fined tens and tens of thousands of dollars for not looking into the possibility of if it is a contaminated site. So it is your responsibility to check if it is a contaminated site before we sell it. Because from what I know from BC environment, and I'm a very strong authoritative person, I know, who also work for BC environment, if contamination is found, whether you own it or not, but it was there and you didn't disclose it, there's tens of thousands of dollars and the appeal is dropped immediately. It doesn't go through. It is a check the environmental. I can give you the chapter or the verse. What it is. So just be cautious of the environmental. BC. I can look it up again. I think actually I sent it in one of those letters I sent you guys. I didn't get a response from.
All right.
I'm Lyndon Gibbons. I live in Kaslo, BC. I just would like to. This might be my layman's understanding of the legal letter that was sent to the village, but to me, it seemed like it mostly addressed council's actions and the actions of staff. And I just would like to put into question whether that's an appropriate thing to forward to the business that the council is engaged with, whereas because it seems like it's more about the council's actions, not necessarily entirely the agreement being made with QB. I find that a little bit questionable that a question about council's decisions and staff's actions is being put forward to a completely separate entity rather than referred to the village's legal counsel.
Are there any questions online? You can raise your hand. Okay. Okay, all right, Andy? Okay, Andy, did you want to ask a question?
Maybe we can have me. It's a meeting. I'm okay.
Counselor Lang, can you do a test to make sure that the sound is still working, that we can hear you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, and I can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just waiting to see if Andy is able to communicate with us. Okay, so is there anyone else that you saw online? Oh. Okay, so we'll go back to the room.
Hi, Beth Ball in Kaslo. I'm wondering, I might have read it incorrectly. Does the lawyer letter say, please answer the questions? Or we have to go into just review. And I'm getting the sense that you've jumped to, we better go right to initial review. Maybe the first step is to answer the questions.
Are there any other questions?
Andy's trying to.
Okay. No, please. Okay, I see that you're muted, Andy. At least it looks like it is. You are on our end. All right. Well, sorry, technology isn't agreeing with you tonight. We have the chat disabled, so. Great. So, in regard to your comments, Kit, that's received, we're not experts in contaminated sites, and so that's all I can say on that. Yeah. Well, we don't take action we don't debate, and we don't take action on items that are raised during public information. Mr. Gibbons, it is on a public agenda now, even though it's legal, it's on a public agenda. So the developer cannot be prevented from having a copy of it. And as I stated, when I made that motion, it was to see if the developer could make some changes that might make it more, address the concerns that have been raised. And Ms. Gall, yeah, I don't have an answer for that. And where our question period is over. Well, everybody was given it. So I will allow what council can ask brief clarifying questions. You're not debating. Anything? Through the chair?
The chair. Could you clarify what?
Okay.
You're not allowed to talk in person.
Oh, okay. Since I will allow, so state your name and your place of residence.
My name is Andy Shadrack. I live at 314 D Avenue, Kaslo. As some people here will know, I was a regional district director for 9 years. And during that time, I had to deal with the contaminated site of Central Waste in Salem. I'm really shocked by the decision you made tonight to refer a document from a lawyer to the proponent, but not your own lawyer. We know that site has contamination, including a number of minerals. We don't know the extent of that contamination, how deep it is, or whether when we put water into that site, it won't flush out into the lake. We need to know the liabilities that you as a council are taking on behalf of all of us in this village. And that's what I've been saying all along. I want to know the extent of the contamination. And I have a letter from the ministry saying your liability stays even if you put waivers in the agreement. I have a letter. So I'm warning you. You are putting a lot of liability on these people, and it really upset me, especially as someone who was elected for 9 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
So, Councillor Brown.
My clarifying question was just, you had said that you felt it was improper that it would go to the developer. I guess to clarify, what would be your preferred action that you take?
I think it would be much more appropriate for it to go to villages council, seeing as it is about not necessarily the agreement with the company, but again, about council and staff's actions. Those are what need to be reviewed, vis-a-vis the document that you guys were given. Not necessarily the QP changing what they want from their agreement with you, but rather, again, it's council staff's actions that should be reviewed here, and that should be done not by QP, but by the village's lawyer.
So that brings us to the end of our agenda. So I will take a motion to adjourn. Councillor Brown.